Welcome to the Waverley Local Planning Panel for this meeting on the 27th of September 2023. On behalf of the panel, I'd like to respectfully acknowledge the Indigenous heritage of the Waverley local government area and recognise the ongoing Aboriginal traditional custodianship of the land which forms this area. I'm Helen Lockett, I'm the chair of the planning panel today, and I'm joined by two independent experts, Peter Brennan to my right and Sandra Robinson to my left, and our community representative, Claire Edwards. The public meeting is being recorded and being live streamed on YouTube. On our agenda today, we have 8 items, and each speaker will have the opportunity to speak for 3 minutes to address the panel, and then an alarm will sound. Please wrap up once the alarm is sounded, as we have a number of speakers to get through today. And please remain on mute unless you have been called to speak to the panel. And we have no apologies, and I'll now ask for conflicts of interest from the panel members. Does anyone have a conflict of interest that they would like to declare at this time?
Yes, I do, Madam Chair. I have a conflict in relation to item 1, which is 12 Ramsgate Avenue, Bondi Beach. As a year or so ago, my company provided planning advice to the Owners Corporation. And I also have a conflict in relation to item 8, 241 Bondi Road, as I'm providing planning advice to the landowner on another property.
Okay, thank you. So we'll ask you to just step out for the consideration of those items. Thanks, Sandra. Anyone else?
Item 4, I've become recently acquainted with one of the signatures of the letter, but it's only in a PNC.
Okay, so I don't consider that to be a conflict of interest, so I think you can remain, but thank you for notifying us. Do you have any conflicts to declare?
I have no conflicts of interest.
Thank you. All right. In accordance with the panel's operations, the panel members have all independently inspected the sites, and we've also been provided with very thorough briefing notes. We've read the planners' reports, your submissions, and understand the concerns associated with each of the applications. So please really speak to the core issues, because we already have read and discussed the matters before us. At the conclusion of the meeting, we will consider each application, and the determination will be available on the council's website as soon as possible. I'll call each item using the DA number and street address. And first I'll call for the objectors, and then once they have spoken, I'll ask for the applicant to speak and address any of the concerns that have been brought up, or any of the conditions imposed by council. So let's start now. And the first matter is DA 56/2023 for 12 Ramsgate Avenue, Bondi Beach, the alterations and additions to ground floor units 1 and 2. And I have Alex Smith or Anna Yago registered to speak. If you could please speak to the panel now.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. My name is Anna. I'm an architect and I'm representing CSA Architects. I'm here today just to say that we accept the conditions of consent and just to answer any question that the panel might have. Thanks.
I actually have a question, Anna. At the moment, one of the conditions for consent is that the space can only be used for storage. It will not be permissible to use it for any kind of habitable space. I note that you are excavating
Yes.
to some extent, and did you consider excavating to provide for a space which would be able to be inhabited? Because the concern that the panel has that there may be illegal use of this or illegal occupation of this space for maybe a study or an additional living space.
So I believe what we're trying to achieve is just to accommodate a more not as complicated to access existing storage room, rather than having an additional floor space or habitable room in this case. So I understand the concerns that the height is not the minimum to be habitable, and therefore the intention of the owners is only to have a more not as complicated to access storage room.
Okay, so you can live with that condition.
Yeah, we are aware of that and we will deal with that, yes.
Okay. Peter?
Yeah, just as a follow-up from that, the present use of one of those rooms is that as a home office. So your client's prepared to forego that and just use it for storage only.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, as we don't have any objectors to speak, we'll thank you for your representation, and we'll go on to the next matter, which is item 2, DA 123/2023 at 60 Gilbert Street, Dover Heights. It is for the demolition of an existing dwelling and ancillary structures for construction of a new 3-story dwelling, garage, and swimming pool within the front setback. And I have 2 registered speakers, both from the applicant side. So is Anthony or Robin
Good
to address?
afternoon. Anthony Beatrice from APC Planning.
Okay, Anthony, do you want to address the panel?
Really only to answer any questions. We're happy with the recommendation and the conditions of consent.
Okay. Panel, are there any questions with regard to this? No? No. Okay. I think we've discussed this and we're satisfied with the council report. So thank you for coming today, and we'll move on to the next matter.
Thank you very much.
The next matter is DA 67/2023 at 7 Wollongara Road, Dover Heights, for alterations and additions to a dwelling house. And we have no submissions received, and we don't seem to have anyone to address the panel. It is a technical non-compliance, so it's fairly straightforward. If we don't have anyone to speak to the panel, we'll move on to the next one. DA 4461/2022, 10 Carlisle Street, Tamarama. This is for substantial alterations and additions to a residential flat building, including 2 new basement levels with basement parking. And we have one objector registered to speak. Oh, actually, no, we have 3 objectors registered to speak. The first is Brett Daintree. Is Brett here?
I am, Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, I did provide late correspondence to the panel, and I asked that the panel secretariat share that with you as an aide-memoire to my verbal submissions today. And it has an important diagram in it. Have the panel received that?
We have that? No, I don't think we have that actually. Okay, we'll have a
Could
look.
I share my screen with the panel in that case and share the diagram?
Is it possible? I'm happy for you to do that. Yep.
Okay.
As long as, you know, we don't go over time in the
No,
interest.
that's fine. Look, I'll share my screen now, and I just wanted to talk to the impacts on my client, which is the neighbour to the. Can you see that screen, Pam?
Yes.
Can you see the
enlarge it?
diagram? Is that clear enough?
No, you might have to enlarge it if you possible.
Okay, I might have to open. Okay, we'll see if I can. No, different diagram. Okay, I'll see if I can increase the size of this. Sorry, panel, the size of the screen and the resolution, I can't seem to change it. Panel, I have shared this late correspondence that's on your screen with the Secretariat, and I would ask the Secretariat to print that off for you so that you can consider it behind closed doors. Suffice to say, our major concern is the new introduction of elevated common open, private open space areas at the various levels of the building, and large windows that will overlook the private open space of my client on the eastern side of this building. So the first request is that a modifying condition be imposed, which is articulated in my late correspondence, that will require minimum 1.5 metre high translucent, that's frosted or white glass or opaque privacy screens, to the eastern perimeter of the southern balconies and terraces at every level of the building, and that's shown in that diagram. B, we would request that there be a minimum 1.5 metre high windowsill height to the southernmost east-facing windows at every level of the building. Again, that is shown in figure 1. In relation to the extent of excavation, there is quite extensive excavation proposed under this building. As a planner and a building surveyor, I actually question how it will be affected without having some serious impacts on the existing structure. Nevertheless, in relation to the impacts on my client, I've asked for a vibration monitoring condition to be imposed. I won't repeat all of the wording of that proposed condition. Suffice to say that I seek that continuous vibration monitoring be implemented before demolition and during all development work, so that the peak particle velocity measured at the boundary does not exceed 1 millimetre per second. And if it does so, that the work would cease until the geotechnical engineer supervising the project has established why the peak particle velocity has exceeded that limit, and any supplementary precautions or work method requirements necessary to ensure it doesn't happen again. We are quite concerned given the extensive...
Sorry, Brett, you've actually gone over time, so could you wrap up?
Yep. I've sought 2 other small conditions, one relating to security fencing, hoardings and overhead protection, and one relating to dilapidation reports. And I would seek that they be added as conditions for consent. We generally oppose the proposal. We know it's recommended for approval. We know it's an existing structure, and we're pretty certain that you'll approve it in some form. But most important to us is the protection of privacy to the neighbour at number 8 adjoining. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you very much. And we'll have a look at your submission after we finish the meeting, the public meeting. Okay, so the next person registered to speak is Kim Kench from 8 Silver Street. Is Kim there? Oh,
Good morning, panel. How are you?
Thanks. Good.
Great. We would like the WLPP to look for a better plan of the 2 underground car parking levels so it could be reduced to 1, which would also remove the need to use the rear laneway for an entranceway, increasing safety to neighbours. In the current plans, the first underground story currently consists of 65% extra living space and merely 35% car parking space for 2 cars. This living space in the area includes a massive second bathroom, a second laundry for that 1 unit, a cinema, a living space measuring 72 square metres, which they have labelled a gym storage area. The total living space for apartment 1 is 400 square metres. By including an underground pool in the plans, this has also reduced the number of car spaces that would be available if the development was limited to 1 underground level. 7 car spaces could be achieved in 1 level without the extra void or extra living spaces. We asked that the WLPP read Woolcott's engineering report, which was submitted as part of our objections, as it outlines 4 issues that relate to our property: retaining walls, water runoff, surface of the laneway, and vibrations causing damage to our property that are of the most concern to us, and they have not been addressed by either the applicant or council. We seek that as part of conditions of build, that a structurally adequate retaining wall that will withstand the construction loadings and any heavy machinery be used in the rear laneway. We wish the surface and the gradient of the laneway be stable and leave our property safe from accidents, erosion and stormwater runoff across our boundary, but be redirected to escape back into Silver Street. We further worry that the extra traffic and weight on the rear laneway will further exacerbate the water escaping along our northern boundary into our property or cause further erosion problems. The build of a new fence that would minimise the effect of if there was an unfortunate accident did occur either during construction or post as a result of the new entranceway and increased traffic. An additional curved inlet pit on Silver Street be placed to capture water cascading down Silver Street on the eastern side, as the eastern side of the street currently only has one because of the existing driveways. In relation to vibrations experienced on our property through the demolition and excavation process, as per Woolacott's recommendation, we would like installed vibrations monitoring equipment, having it set to an alarm if the vibrations exceeds 2 millimeters per second at any time. If the alarm is triggered, then work should cease immediately and construction methods or equipment be altered to reduce vibration. This contrasts with the applicant's geotechnical report recommending allowed vibrations up to 5 millimeters per second. At the very least, we would ask that our house be considered to be in line with Soil Rock's recommendations of lowering to 3 millimeters per second if the existing structures were considered to be built in weak conditions. And lastly, considering it is our understanding we rely on council's recommendations and the builder's insurance to cover any damage to our property, we believe it would be prudent to take the more conservative approach, which would reduce the risk of damage to our property. We would seek to have the 2 millimeter vibrations condition as a condition of the build. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Our next speaker is Paul McGivern.
Good afternoon, panel, and thank you for allowing me the time to speak to you today. I'm the owner of number 6 Carlisle Street, and I have a rear entry to my property on the same.
Could you please speak up? You've just gone very quiet all of a sudden.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes, that's better. Thank you.
Okay, my apologies. I'm the owner of number 6 Carlisle Street, Tamarama. I'm one of the houses that accesses the rear of my property off the laneway that they're proposing to provide an entry to the garage from. I just would like to reiterate my support of both the previous speakers. Both the concerns that they've raised directly impact my property as well. So I'm supportive of all their requests. Additionally, would like to point out to the panel that it is a private laneway that has access to 3 properties at the rear and not to number 10 currently. So there's currently 5 cars that utilise that laneway, and it's very narrow and it has no underlying structural support for it. And we are, like number 8 Silver Street, genuinely concerned about the structural rigidity of the existing laneway. And furthermore, we are very concerned that this is a major redevelopment and that we will have nowhere to park our 2 cars, which are currently kept off the street during the construction process. There's very limited parking in those streets, as you're aware, and we are very concerned that we will not be able to find anywhere to park the cars during the construction process as well. So we note that Silver Street, the street frontage for the property on Silver Street is extensive, and we're sort of surprised that they're not able to utilise that street frontage more to enable adequate access to and from the underground garage from Silver Street and not from the laneway. So they were the main points that I wanted to make. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McGivern. Now, I'd like to hear from the applicant. I've got 4 registered speakers. I don't know who's going to speak first. Anthony Boscovitz, are you going to speak?
I won't, but I'll just introduce our speakers as they go. I'll be more to respond to some of the matters raised by the objector. So I might ask Mr. Elliot Dumanis, who's the project town planner, to start, and then Mr. Simon Hanson, the registered architect on the job, can continue thereafter.
Good afternoon, members of the panel. My name is Elliot Dumanis. I'm from GSA Planning, and I'm speaking on behalf of the applicant in support of the application. I have with me in support of the application and to answer any questions of the committee, Mr. Anthony Boscovitz, who is the applicant solicitor, Mr. Simon Hanson, the applicant architect, and Mr. Martio Portez, who is the applicant structural engineer. First, I'd just like to confirm that we concur with the assessment contained in the council officer's report, and of course, a recommendation of approval. We do not wish to challenge any conditions of the consent. Secondly, as you may be aware, the proposal is a permissible development in the R3 zone. And I would just like to start with outlining the key benefits of the proposed development. Firstly, the proposal will replace a dated building with a contemporary built form that will comprise a highly articulated frontage and high quality finishes that will contribute to enhancing the site's appearance in the streetscape and neighbouring properties. Proposed works will maintain a 4-storey design with the addition of a semi-subterranean lower ground floor level and two basement levels. The existing garages at the ground floor level fronting Silver Street will be removed and replaced with basement car parking that will not be readily visible from the streetscape. The works will include substantial landscaping, including an opportunity for increased landscaping along the Silver Street frontage. The proposal also best reflects orderly and economic use of the land in accordance with the objectives of the EP&A Act. While there is a non-compliance with the height and FSR standards, it's important to note that the existing building is non-compliant with these standards. In terms of the height, the proposal seeks to retain the maximum building height as existing. And this is further stated in page 171 of the Council Officer's report. And these matters have been adequately addressed in the clause 4.6 of the LEP. Similarly, FSR, although the proposal does increase GFA, the additional floor space is contained in the existing building envelope and does not create any unreasonable amenity impacts to the surrounding properties and will preserve the existing level of amenity. The addition will also involve, as aforementioned, the addition will also include the removal of the garages from the streetscape, improving the outlook from the public domain. We concur with the assessment of the council's report and agree that the listed breaches are consistent with the desired future character and would substantially improve the outlook of the aged RFB. Proposal also complies with most other controls relating to the DCP and ADG. And lastly, the proposal was also supported from the Design Excellence Panel. Now, I'd just like to touch on privacy concern raised by the neighbouring property along Silver Street in respect of the upper floor level veranda. I'd just like to point out that we have privacy screenings along the eastern elevation to habitable rooms of the eastern elevation of the proposed development. Along with that, the upper floor level veranda is an existing veranda, and therefore there's not going to be any additional privacy concerns from that area. Thank you, and welcome any questions from the panel.
Okay, thanks. Thank you. I just want to affirm that you're aware that if at some point during construction there is sort of inadvertent demolition, that the development application would be void and you would have to lodge a new development application. You're aware of that?
I'll answer that. The answer is this is a substantive alteration and addition.
We understand that. It's more a logistical thing.
I'm a solicitor, but I don't have leave to respond in legal terms. We understand the conditions of consent, specifically condition 21, which talks to structural documentation. And then they obviously go on that requires third-party structural engineering and project geotechnical engineering approval, both internally by that third-party engineer, but also that has to be provided to council for their consent. So we don't anticipate at all that will occur. And the purpose of doing the development in this form was to ensure the economic and orderly use of the land. So I don't perceive that there's going to be an issue with respect to the potential for the property.
Okay, so then you wouldn't have any issue with us imposing a deferred commencement condition to outline a detailed construction methodology.
Well, the council's report has gone through those provisions at clause 6 of the LEP with respect to earthworks and other works, and are satisfied that the building won't affect adjoining neighbours, won't affect the public domain, and will largely be able to be developed. We would say that it would probably be unnecessary for that to occur, but in the event that that's the requirement of the council, then that's the position, and the requirement of the panel, then that's the position that if they wish to take to approve it, then we don't object.
Okay, thank you.
And can I just add to that? Sorry, Chair. We have, with the application, we also supplied a construction methodology from the structural engineer outlining how the building can be built. So there is already that information available to council.
Just in a similar vein, there's an advising the end of the conditions that talks about if there's any demolition greater, that any more fabric demolished than what's shown on the drawings, that you would need to lodge a further DA or a new DA. Is that's something that the panel has contemplated, moving that to a condition rather than just an advising? Are you confident that you're able to complete the project without any further demolition?
Can I draw your attention to condition 21A2? And that condition refers to the construction methodology and structural report dated 25 August 2022 and structural plans dated 30/4/2022 prepared by Ports Project and Services Pty Ltd, that they're a reputable engineer who Mr. Hanson might be able to correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that they're certified for regulated design. So we would be satisfied that, and the panel could be satisfied that and comfortable that this building can be built in accordance with that construction methodology, and that there won't be any cause for concern with respect to the potential for the building to be demolished at some point in the project.
Okay, well, so then there shouldn't be an issue with it becoming a condition.
I'm not here to give you legal advice on that.
Okay. I had a. Is there any other questions for? I've got a question for the architect. So.
Okay, I guess I've got a question along the same lines of the earlier questions to the structural engineer, just to clarify a couple of things. So maybe after you, I'll. No. Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Porties, I understand, is with you. The structural engineer.
We don't seem to be able to locate him in the waiting room.
Oh, okay.
I'm afraid I'm not. He was issued the link. He is overseas.
Right.
I was looking at drawing number DA020, revision A, which is the demolition plan, a level 1. And according to this plan, unless I'm mistaken, it shows all the slabs, all the walls at that level to be demolished. And yet on the first and second floor and third floor levels, it shows existing walls to be retained. I would like to know how those walls are going to be retained if all of the walls and floor slabs beneath them are to be demolished.
I might allow Mr. Hanson to respond to that.
Yeah, I guess I can share the structural engineering drawings that demonstrate how that's going to happen. I haven't got those up, I'm sorry, but I will be able to have them up shortly and share them. But that is correct, that floor is coming out, and that is purely around trying to improve the amenity of the floor to ceilings. This building has low floor to floors generally, and what we're trying to do by taking the floor that you're referring to out is to lower it and to create an ADG compliant floor to ceiling in that ground floor apartment. Just getting the methodology up now. It's just the drawings.
It's not the intention, it's more the logistics that are being queried.
Sure, I'm just trying to get the drawing up. I apologise for the delay. I should have had that up.
I've got the report and I've got the drawing.
I've got here, so we'll just share screen if I may.
I am already. Do you want me to share the plans or the report?
Just I've got it here, Anthony.
We've got it on the screen. Oh, we had it on the screen a minute ago.
I'll allow Mr. Hanson to do it. Might be easier from his side.
Sorry. So is that so? Can you?
Yes, we can see that. Thank you.
Yeah. So this is essentially there's a series of structure that sits on the first floor or just under that first floor and maintains the building above. And these beams are like any needling that you might see in a doorway or something like that. This is just on obviously a bigger scale. It's sort of essentially those large beams there are needled through just under that first floor, and then the slab below is then removed, and obviously we're keeping external walls where we can. Obviously there's lock-up garages on Silver Street, but we're keeping the east boundary walls, and obviously there's a series of columns that come through there as well. So there's a sort of a short section, if you like, showing those beams that do what I'm calling the needling, and you see this existing contiguous piling that goes into either side, and obviously we build up a portal frame off those contiguous piles and then go underneath the building.
Simon, can you share the construction methodology report, please? And if you don't have it, I can share it, the report itself.
So you're excavating below that. I mean, have we got all these reports?
Yes. I'll share my screen, Simon, if I can.
I'll stop share. Yeah, sure.
Please. So this is I draw your attention again, panel, to condition 21A. And 21A refers to both those plans that Mr. Hanson was showing, as well as this report, which is the Ports Project and Services P2A Ltd report. Now, and you can see it was filed with the council as part of the development application. Bear in mind, of course, that this is the subject of a third party and independent structural engineers review of it, which must be, and I'll read the condition just for abundant caution. It says the construction management plan must be submitted to an independent third-party structural engineer and the project geotechnical engineer for approval. The engineers must have relevant experience and have chartered status with the Institute of Engineering Australia and be registered on the National Engineers Register. The construction management plan must incorporate and reflect the intent of those documents. Satisfaction of the third party.
Yeah. I mean, we don't really need you to read this out. It's an informed panel, and we've also had experience of these sorts of constructions not going to plan. So we're just trying to satisfy ourselves that the information that we've received and have seen can actually address the requirements of the construction.
We understand being previous issues. We certainly don't want to be tarred with that brush, and we've come up with a comprehensive plan that includes 30 points, which also
I just want to confirm before you keep on going with the council officers, these documents that are being shared at the moment, we have access to. Yeah. Okay. All right. So I don't think you need to complete that. Yep. Okay. Thank you. I just sort of a question for Simon, the architect. I'm just concerned about the expression or the articulation of the facades. You've used the louver screening, and I appreciate that provides privacy and screening of sun and solar, but it's just relentless, and especially on the Silver Street elevation, there's actually 2 rooms. I mean, is there any possibility that you could articulate that facade to actually have more than one single expression over a 3 to 4 story elevation? At least on the long facade, there's articulation of balconies and windows, and it is more articulated. But anyway, that's my. I appreciate adjoining the neighbours. Screening is an imperative for privacy and overlooking. But I do think from a urban contribution, look, I mean, that's probably a good slide. So you've got quite a bit of on this one, the end one.
So it's Carlisle Street.
Carlisle Street, yeah. So Silver Street's the short street, isn't it?
Silver Street's the hill.
Yeah. I mean, for example, could you actually modify the louvers on the bathroom and the bedroom so that the bathroom was more, I mean, it's probably going to be closed most of the time anyway if it's a bathroom, but it just seems something a little bit more articulated might be the go without losing the architectural language of the building.
Well, of course, the answer is yes, Chair. I mean, we can certainly do anything. This has been through a fairly rigorous iteration. That the urban design review panel meeting was very favourable of where we've ended up. So, but you know, certainly we can change it. There's the risk, obviously, in these adaptations is that you end up with a raft of different materials. And I guess what I can say is that we've attempted to maintain quite a robust sandstone base. We've picked up on the horizontality of the building and enhanced that by continuing these balconies that run along the west side. And
it's not the street elevation, it's the other street elevation that I'm commenting on.
Yeah, so
this one,
that
one.
elevation there. I think, well, look, I mean, we can change it for sure. If we can condition that, that'd be great. But look, I mean, I think it's a great contribution. And again, I go back to where we were with the urban design review panel meeting, and I think it's, you know, we can do it if we can condition it, that'd be fine.
So so I understand, are they all fixed louvers or are they operable, or the bathroom and bedroom separate in terms of their operability on each of the three levels? So, I mean, what kind of variation or potential for variation is there within that existing facade system?
Well, they're all fixed and they're deep and they're you know, all the same all the way through for all three levels, and that's the attractive feature that we see it brings to the streetscape. But they can be operable. We can create operable ones over in the bedroom area. We can certainly create finer ones if that was the panel's desire over the bathroom area. That's a possibility. Okay. And so when you say they're fixed, is it to provide privacy, or is it to, I mean you can see right into the rooms. So I'm just not quite sure what the purpose of them is. Yeah, that's facing north. So it's a privacy shroud. They're quite deep. So I can't remember how deep they are. We drew them quite some time ago, but what was the 600? Yeah, no, I don't think they're that deep. So, but yeah, they're deep and they do provide that kind of shroud, if you like, to those bedrooms. And clearly, you'd have, you know, curtains and so on behind that. But they also provide shadowing. Okay. All right. Okay. We'll have a look at that. Thank you. Any other questions from the panel? Do you have any more questions?
About the pitch group.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it's been through the urban design panel, the design for the building. I just wondered why you decided to remove the flat roof to the pitch when you could still have solar panels on a slight rise on the roof and you could see no pitch, just the lift parapet.
Oh, sorry. The roof itself is a hip roof existing, and the roof that we've proposed is a hip roof, albeit it doesn't have a hip roof with eaves. It has a hip roof with a parapet, and the solar panels sit on the east side on that angle of the hip roof. Is that
Yeah,
sorry?
so you're just trying to minimise the additions and changes.
So that the roof is new. It is but it's a hip roof. It's I'm not sure I understand the question. Sorry.
Just from when you go to the previous drawings, I just think the flat roof looked better than the pitch roof, and more in keeping with.
Yeah, we've had a flat roof, we've had a pitched roof, we've had a domed roof, but this is where we've ended up as per the urban design review panels meeting.
And I'd just like to add on to that we did look at a flat roof option with council's officers, and we found that the flat roof option resulted in more overshadowing to neighbouring properties as opposed to the option we have in front of us.
Okay. All right, thank you. Okay, if there's no more questions from the panel, we'll thank you for your representations today. And
we've responded, but I haven't spoken. I would just like to respond to one of the issues that two or three of the objectives have raised, if that's possible. I've responded to questions, but not made any submissions. I'm not going to reinvent the wheel, but there was one issue raised with respect to vibration monitoring that I'd like to respond to.
Sure.
Thank you, panel. In practice, we don't oppose a condition requiring vibration monitoring, and we think it would be part of the construction management plan and the construction plans moving forward anyway. My concern is about the extent of the peak particle velocity calculated in millimeters per second, where one of the objectives has suggested 1 millimeter, one has suggested 2 or potentially 3, where the standard for a residential flat building is 5 to 20. Generally, the more conservative approach is given to substantial heritage items, whether they be building around them on the same lot or with surrounding buildings of heritage value. And generally speaking, it would be 2.5 to 3. 0.085 to 0.1 is imperceptible to humans. And we say that 5 is the satisfactory number. It's still very conservative, but it's the number that's generally accepted in the Eastern Suburbs councils, and we're happy to accept 5 MMS as that vibration that would require stop work and all of those other things that occur in vibration monitoring. So we accept a condition of 5 millimeters per second.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll now go on to the next application, which is DA 134/2023 5 Flood Street, Bondi. We have one objector registered to speak, Maxine Scalabrino.
Hi there. Hi. Yes, I am speaking on behalf of number 3 Flat Street. Basically, there is window 03, which is a high level window that overlooks from the kitchen, overlooking into the courtyard and diagonally up into a bedroom. We ask that window receive a translucency of, let's say, 70%, so that any perceived overlooking or privacy can then be curbed.
So are you talking about the high level window that exists, or
there's window 03, it's a high level window over the kitchen. It's part of the
it seems to be above eye height in the
correct, it's at 2.4. However,
yes,
the property at number 5 is higher than number 3. And this window, if it is a clear glazed window, will actually allow the inhabitants to actually look diagonally up into number 3 Flood Street, into bedroom windows, existing bedroom windows. So we ask for that window to receive a translucency of 70%, so that there can be no privacy, so that privacy for both properties can then be maintained.
think because it's above cabinet work, it might be a bit, I don't think that might be physically achievable to see up at that angle, but we can ask the applicant.
So that's really what we ask for.
Okay.
It is
that you'd like to
that's it.
mention? Okay.
No, that's all.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Can we hear from the applicant now, Brad Phillips?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'd just like to say that we're obviously happy with the council's recommendation for approval. Understand the neighbour at number 3 has some concerns of that that highlight window, which, as the panel mentioned, is at 2.4 above internal finished floor level on our side. The neighbouring property is also in the vicinity of 5 metres or more from that window or from the boundary itself. So we feel that any obscuring of that window is sort of not going to actually achieve any additional privacy anyway. We don't actually see that there's a visual privacy issue there at all, and that's what the council's also agreed with. If the council, if the panel has any other questions, we're happy to address those, but we just don't see that being a privacy issue generally. We've worked pretty hard across the project to ensure that privacy is maintained between the two sites, because being a southern facing building, it's quite hard to achieve northern light within the existing buildings. So yeah, we actually see there's a huge benefit of improved amenity to the internal spaces of the proposal.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions from the panel?
No.
Do you have any comments about the fence or not really?
We'll ask then. With the proposed increase in height of the front fence, I can understand pool safety, but pool safety is to prevent people from outside getting into the pool area, either from the street or the streets or the adjoining property. And here they appear well above 1.2 metres. Could you comment on the necessity to increase the height? Is that more for your own privacy within the pool level because the pool's elevated above the ground?
So for boundary fencing at pools, we understand the code to be 1.8 metres. And so that's dictating the height of the front fence, which sits inside the existing boundary wall fence. We understand council's accepted that with the condition that it's clear glazing, and so we'd happily accept that. We also proposed to council that I understand council, the only people who can accept a non-compliance to that code. Sorry, I've forgotten what the actual.
That's okay.
You said it was glazing, so that probably.
Yeah.
So council have, as part of the conditions, recommended clear glazing. So we will accept that as a condition of consent. So,
yep. Okay.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah, I'll be sure with the council officers.
Yep. Yep. Okay. Yep.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right. Thank you very much. And we'll now move on to the next item on the agenda, DA 82/2023, 12 Imperial Avenue, Bondi. And we have a number of objectors to speak. Is Tina Matthews here?
Hi, it's Adrian Meredith here. Can you see me?
Oh, you're very small.
Oh, that's weird.
We can hear you.
Oh, you can hear me. I've just had a message from Tina. She was on the call, and unfortunately, she's had to take her mother to an urgent medical appointment. I can either read out what she was going to say, or I can submit that to you in a different format, whatever you prefer.
Well, if you want to do that, that's perfectly fine.
Okay, all right. So I'm just been given this. So this is from Tina Matthews. As I said, she was on the line and she's a last minute apology. Reading from Tina, she said the Imperial Avenue Conservation Precinct, based on the principle of preserving what is one of the last remaining areas in the Bondi area, of which 12 Imperial Avenue is the jewel in the crown. One of the purposes of establishing that conservation precinct was to maintain the balance between open, permeable space and built environment, of space between neighbouring properties, and of course, the essential architecture and characteristics of a suburb established in another area. This proposed DA ignores these ambitions and for that reason should be rejected. Allowing this incremental erosion of the precinct's character eventually results in it becoming unworthy of conservation. That's not a win for anyone.
Is that it?
That's it.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Tina. Yeah. We'll now hear from Brett Daintree and Adrian Meredith.
I'm happy to go first, Chair, if that's acceptable. Again, I'd like to share my screen, and I hope this time that we have more success with the scale of the drawing. Is that appropriate?
Yes.
I am the planner and building surveyor for the southern neighbour, albeit I've made quite detailed submissions, and again in writing. The main objections are to the new guest bedroom and ensuite over the new porte cochere, and the high brick wall at the porte cochere itself that supports it. This is imposing upon the southern neighbour, does add some overshadowing to the neighbour. And it's my submission that this element is unreasonable and unnecessary. The GFA or this room could be accommodated to the rear in a more sympathetic form. Despite the report stating it's not visible from the street, you can see from the street elevations as well that it is highly visible from the street, although it's set back behind the front of the building. Also of worthy note is that the roof form will intrude into the principal roof form. This stands out when you consider the rear wing, where you can see that there's a lightweight connection between the rear wall and the rear additions. But again here, the rear additions themselves are not subservient to the principal form. They protrude well above the gutter line. And it's my submission that one, the room over the porte cochere should be deleted. And two, the rear form should be lowered so that it is genuinely subservient to the principal form. It seems to me that the applicant has considered the need not to intrude into the roof form at the rear, but rather perversely is happy to protrude into the principal roof form on the side visible from the streetscape. The only other submission I have is in relation to the new bin storage area. These are immediately below my client's living, family and kitchen areas, and there's ample space within the rear garage to move the bin storage to the rear, and that should occur as well. They're my submissions. I've also provided written correspondence and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Is Adrian Meredith going to speak as well or not?
Yes, I am, Chair. I've just tried to dial in on another device so you can actually see me, but I haven't been let into the room. So I'm not sure why people can't see me, but if someone wants to let me in on the iPad, I'm happy to speak to that, if that can be done quickly.
Well, we can hear you, so it's probably okay.
Okay. Okay, someone's just let me in. Okay, I'm now in.
Oh, great. Okay, we can see you.
Can you see me now?
Yes, yes.
And hear me, great. I'm just leaving the other meeting.
You're on mute, Adrian. Can you just... Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Apologies, everyone. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Great. So my name is Adrian Meredith and my family and I live at 14 Imperial Avenue, Bondi. and we've lived here for over 13 years. So this is our home where my husband, my younger son, and I live together. Now, I understand that 12 Imperial Avenue is a heritage item in the Imperial Avenue Urban Conservation Area. And when we purchased our home, we did that knowingly that any modifications there would be limitations on them, and the same thing would apply to the neighbours, particularly in regard to the front facades. I understand this was to preserve the heritage feel of what I feel and many other residents feel is a very unique and special part of Bondi. So with this in mind, you probably might understand why I was perplexed how a 2-storey porte cochere with a second guest bedroom and 6th bathroom that was clearly visible from the street was permissible under these heritage guidelines. Now, I'm aware of 3 heritage reviews that were undertaken, one by the applicants, the second by the heritage officer at Waverley Council, and the third one we commissioned through Weir Phillips. Now, the Weir Phillips advice was pretty clear, and that was the porte cochere should be at a maximum 1-storey with a hip roof. So I really just urge the panel consider this advice by Weir Phillips when they're reviewing their assessment. The next thing is the proposed rear addition. So as it currently stands, it's going to significantly block our morning sunshine to the kitchen, living area and outdoor space. Now, a small change to the plan to lower the proposed roof line below the existing gutter height of the current house is going to allow the same amenity to the applicants if they use a bit more of a skillful design, but it's going to have a huge impact for us because it'll mean that we can still get that morning sunshine, which especially in winter is at a premium and very important to us. The last thing I just want to mention, because I thought it was relevant to bring up at this point, is that the owners of 12 Imperial Avenue are actually preparing the house to be sold, to go to the market in a couple of weeks. That was my understanding. This was shared with me by the photographer who was taking the photos in preparation for the sale, and also confirmed later that week by the agent who has been engaged by those owners to undertake that sale.
I don't think that's relevant though.
But I think it is relevant in the point that I just want to say that based on this information, it appears the owners have no intention to actually build what they're proposing or gain any benefit, but we are left with the any consent approvals that are put in place. So I just wanted to mention that.
So you've gone over time now.
Okay, I'm just about to summarise.
Yep.
So my 2 words I'd like to summarise. I want to thank the panel for their time, but if you take 2 things away, the things that are most important and are going to have the greatest impact to our amenity is sunshine and heritage.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to hear from John Gasouris from 16 Imperial.
Madam Chairperson, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak this afternoon. I am from 16 Imperial Avenue, and regarding the DA, my primary concerns are the proposed double-storey addition at the rear of the building. That's my primary concern. Just some background. The property at number 12 hasn't been built in isolation. It was actually built by a builder in the early part of the last century. He built 5 homes, in fact, 12 being one of them. Then there was 14, 16, 18 Imperial, followed by 11 Miller Street. Now that area is it forms part of the heritage locale that we've been speaking about. Each of those properties have been actually built to complement each other. They have been built in a staggered manner to maximise solar access, ventilation and airflow, including views and the aspects of Bondi. So they really form a very unique part of the Bondi fabric. Now, the 2-storey addition at the rear of the property is what we're most concerned about, because it will close off and it will detract from the original intent of the architecture in that locale. Okay, so if they could bring that down by 2 metres, it would still be complementary to the architect's original views. Now, I don't know how much time I have or whether I've gone over, well, if I'm near time. But I do want to summarise by saying solar access, ventilation, the natural aspect of the way that the properties have been established has been a long time, has provided a benefit to all passers-by and to the overall community. District views for me is important as well. We do get nice district views from where I am, as does number 18, and I suspect number 14 as well. So if you could look at the addition and bring that down by, say, 2 metres, then that would go a long way in maintaining the original intent of the set of 5 properties.
Okay, thank you, John.
Thank you.
Now I'd like to hear from the applicant, Kelvin Ho and Natalie Matthews.
Good morning, panel. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Great. My name is Natalie Matthews, and yes, I'm here with my director, Kelvin Ho. We're the architects from Akinatilia representing our clients, Ben and Pensiri Scott. Firstly, we would like to thank David Knight for his communication and coordination of the report to the Waverley Local Planning Panel. As we agree, 12 Imperial Avenue is a jewel in the crown, and we've worked closely with our clients, the Scotts, and all of our specialist consultants to respect the significance of the property as a heritage item that is clearly an asset to the community at large. We believe that we have put together a proposal that is sympathetic to and honours its heritage, complying with the objectives as set out within the DCP and LEP while meeting the needs of our clients. During the DA process, the project was deferred, and we provided additional information as well as a number of modifications to the proposal. And this was to appease council and respond to some of the more legitimate concerns as raised by community members. We are familiar with council's recommendation for approval as submitted by David Knight, and understanding of the 2 amendments requested as conditions of consent pertaining to the mature height of the southern boundary trees, being 6 ficus trees, and the proportions of the new windows, both of which we are happy to accept. As the panel would be familiar with, and as noted within the report and our documentation, we are compliant for GFA, FSR, height limits, front, side and rear setbacks, solar access, open space, deep soil requirements, swimming pool requirements, driveway requirements, views and privacy. And where merit is discussed relating to heritage, fences and ancillary buildings, David has clearly addressed that the proposal is satisfactory and minor in its non-compliance is having no adverse impact to the building in discussion or any adjoining properties. We would like to respond to the 3 concerns raised by the submissions present, those being heritage, solar and streetscape. During the process, we worked closely with Colin Brady at Council to provide additional information. The roof from the streetscape for the additional porte cochere and the room above is subservient in nature and set back far beyond the front boundary line. This porte cochere is also set back. It's been increased from a 0.9 metre setback to 1.2 metre setback, and that happened during the process of the DA application. We also provided additional solar elevational diagrams to show the windows on the northern boundary of 14 Imperial Avenue, of which that is compliant, with only, I believe, 1 window having 2 hours of impact during the winter solstice. And beyond that, we, I believe that we've addressed the heritage, the solar and the streetscape there. But any additional questions that the panel has, we are very happy to respond to. Thank you.
Okay, I've got a couple. Anyone questions? I've got questions. Do you have questions?
I just had a question, not to Ms Matthews, but to the Mr Daintree or Mrs Meredith.
Okay, well, I've got a question for the architects.
Okay.
Okay, so Natalie, there's a couple of points that have come up. I mean, one of the things about is the subservient roofs, and there is a kind of a language of subservient roofs, but you've got quite a different language from the side porte cochere and the the rear addition. Why is that, and why wouldn't you have a consistent vocabulary when treating additions to this heritage building around the whole? It's a very much a three-dimensional architecture.
Sure. So you're talking about the rear addition?
Yeah.
Yeah, we, from an architectural perspective, we believe that we wanted to accentuate some of the forms that the building already has and speak to those interesting parts of the nature of the existing building. We don't believe that copying like for like is appropriate here, which is why that roof takes on a slightly different form. But we think it is complementary to the nature of the building itself. That rear addition is not visible from the streetscape, and that the side addition complements the northern addition, where we've tried to speak to the similar architectural nature of that that existing wing.
So you also talked about the overshadowing of the neighbouring property. You said it only has an additional 2 hours of, it gets 2 hours of sunshine, did you say? Or
No, we were asked during the process to provide elevational diagrams for 14 Imperial Avenue's northern boundary to show the impact that we had there. Those were provided and deemed to be sufficient and deemed to be approved or able to be approved by David Knight. There was one window, I believe, that was impacted for 2 hours, and the rest gained sunlight throughout the day.
And which window is that?
I can pull that up. Give me a second. Actually, I believe it was
the window or the living area. Yeah.
It was
which room is that?
Sorry. I think it was a living area for the neighbour.
And at what time of day?
I believe it was 11 a.m. and 12 p.m. It's written within David's report.
Okay. All right. And the other question I have for you is with regard to the window fenestration. On inspecting the site, there's no paned windows in the existing building or the neighbouring buildings. And I was just wondering why you would introduce paned windows into a heritage dwelling, which doesn't have any language of that existing.
Sure. This was a request by the client, and we also didn't see it as detracting from the nature of the existing building. We saw that it could be worked in as a complementary way to the heritage nature of the building.
Yeah, it's pretty inconsistent with this period. It's, inconsistent. And I would probably suggest it would detract on the primary street elevations and visible when you look at the ensemble of buildings along the street. So we might condition that.
Sure. Yeah, I think there was already a condition of consent that was written within there about the windows, and further information was to be provided with the window dimensions and material. We had been through a process with council during the application phase, but yes, we understood that there may be further discussion around those windows.
Okay. All right. Any other questions?
No.
Okay. Thank you very much for your representations today.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Oh,
I don't know if it's still there.
Oh.
They still there?
Oh no, because when you said your question was the same as mine, I thought it had been addressed. Oh, have they all gone?
Just for the record, and maybe the council officers later will answer the question. Mrs. Meredith referred to a report from Ware and Phillips.
Oh, yes.
Conservation architects. I just wanted to know whether that was submitted with their submission. I can't see it on
No,
the
I haven't.
submitters that we have. And
I believe that was submitted during the notification period. we viewed that as well during that time.
Okay, so it should be here at council.
Yes, if you have access to the submissions, you would be able to view that.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I'm just interested.
Yes, yes. Okay. Our next application is for DA 110/223 at 481 to 485 Bronte Road, Bronte, and it's the construction of a pergola to an existing rooftop balcony for units 9 and 10. And we have one objector registered to speak, Marissa Pazika, and then the applicant. Marissa, are you there? Are you on mute? Marissa, are you there?
Yes, thank you. Sorry for I'm now no longer on mute. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now. Thank you.
Thank you. May I speak?
Yes, yes, please proceed.
Thank you. Hi, thanks very much. Look, we're just, I'm speaking on behalf of my mum, Rosa Pizzica, who is the owner of 5 Pacific Street, Bronte, which is the building to the south side of the proposed pergola. She is unfortunately ill, and so I'm speaking on her behalf. We put in a submission, and essentially the result of that was that about loss of use from the top story bedroom. And we understand that the loss of use is minor, but just one small point, which is although it's minor, it's the only ocean view that my mum enjoys, and so it is, while minor, it is important for her. And the only that's just a point. I do have one question, which is, seeing as it's going from a very quiet use area, which usually was used for just putting out washing for the common area, to now being a private area. And of course, people would like to go outside and perhaps have friends, have music, and enjoy that area. We wanted to ask whether it's possible to change the fencing that would allow a bit more privacy, even in terms of audio privacy. At the moment, it's just a open lattice fence, which essentially is the back of that building, but which fronts the bedroom, so that hopefully we don't, it helps to stop the visual looking through, which is both a privacy, a good point for both buildings, and for other buildings that front, might be 3 Pacific and 7 Pacific as well. Would that be a consideration?
Okay, so you're not worried about loss of views. You're more worried about privacy. Is that?
Yes, we accept that the loss of views is minor, and there's really, it would have to, basically the pergola would have to not exist, or there would have to be no top of the pergola. So we'll have to leave that as it is. But what we're wondering is whether we can improve the privacy so that we're not looking onto looking through a open lattice screen. And we don't want to increase the height, but could it be more opaque in some way, because it's just a cross lattice screen at the moment?
Okay. All right. Yes, yes. Okay. Thank you. And is that it? Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much, Marissa. The next person is Peter Holmes.
Yes, hi, good afternoon, everybody. I'm not really here to make any further comment apart from that we agree with Council's report. We feel that all of the concerns from the submitters have been addressed with regard to view sharing and solar access. So apart from that, we have no further comment.
Is there any issue with the screening? But are you doing anything to the screening?
No, that lattice screening is existing. So I suppose if Council wants to condition it, then that's up to council. We don't feel that that has any impact on privacy at all.
No. Oh, okay. I think they were thinking about increasing the privacy to the terrace.
Increasing the existing lattice that's there.
That's what was the sense I had from the neighbour.
Yes. So at the moment, what you've got is very. What you've got is very open crisscross lattice, and because the use is increasing of that area, what we wanted to ask was if it was possible to put in more, I don't know, a lattice that has less
structure
holes,
there. We believe that the use would be increased. I don't believe that is the case.
Sorry, can you just repeat that, because I think it was Marissa. Can you please put your microphone on mute now so that Peter Holmes can speak? So Peter, could you repeat what you were?
Yeah, sorry. We didn't feel there were any privacy impacts to begin with. The existing lattice is there. It doesn't need to be changed. If council feels that it needs to change, then council can tell us to do so.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Any other questions?
Yes. Peter, could you confirm that the existing terrace is not in fact a common area, but is already used as private open space for the particular unit?
It is.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Any no other questions?
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for your time today. And the last application today is for DA 80/2023 at 241 Bondi Road, Bondi, for the construction of a pergola to an existing rooftop balcony for units 9 and 10. And we have only the applicant registered to speak. So I've got Chris Horton and Daniel Barber.
Evening, panel members. Chris, did you want to first start with your points you had to discuss in relation to the matter?
Yes, thank you. The application is for the refurbishment of 6 apartments at the back of an existing apartment block on Bondi Road. Daniel submitted a letter yesterday that requested amendment to 2 conditions. I'm just wondering if the panel received that letter and if you've read it.
I didn't see it. Did you see it?
I didn't see it.
No. So
it was after the 3 p.m. cutoff, so that might have been why it wasn't circulated potentially by the Secretariat.
okay, well, why don't you just outline?
I'll speak to those points if you like. Yeah.
All right.
Chris, did you have anything you wanted to add before I spoke in relation to the matter?
I'll just say we're obviously happy with the recommendation for approval from council, and we'd like to thank the assessing officer, Joe Somerville, for his assistance throughout this application. The 2 conditions that we'd like to amend are condition 2A, which relates to privacy, and condition 10, that relates to the affordable housing contribution. I'll talk briefly about condition 2A and let Daniel talk about condition 10. In order to just talk about condition 2A, if I could share my screen, if I could do that now.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're looking at Daniel's letter here that was submitted yesterday. So condition 2A asks us to reduce the length of the rear balcony or balconies. The rear balconies are set back 9 meters from the rear boundary, which is compliant with the ADG minimum requirement, which comprises 6 meter minimum and a 3 meter additional setback because there is a change of zoning on the rear boundary. So we say that because we comply, it's unnecessary and unreasonable to ask us to set back further than the 9 meters. It's a more onerous request than is required for compliance. Council have raised elsewhere the issue of privacy to the sides and requested screening and on those balconies, and we propose to extend that screening for the full length of the balcony as shown on this diagram here. So that would mitigate any privacy concerns to the sides, to the east and west. You can see here on that diagram that we already comply with the minimum 9 meter requirement under the ADG for setback to the rear boundary. I think I should hand over now to Daniel. I'll stop sharing my screen now and then hand over to Daniel.
Okay, great. So pretty much I'm just touching on briefly on the comments that Chris made and also about the affordable housing condition. So my comments relating to the ADG separation, as you're probably well aware, in SEP 65, there's an inconsistency between a DCP control and the apartment design guideline. SEP 65 stipulates that the DCP has no effect and the ADG is to override. So in this instance, the DCP is asking for more onerous privacy requirement than the ADG. The 9 meters in our view is acceptable. The 6+3, where clearly, as per the diagrams provided before, that that's a requirement to a low density zone as it considered to be suitable visual separation, which the proposal complies with. So we're just seeking to amend the condition that reduces the depth of the balcony with the planter, but we accept the privacy screens on either side. And that also speaks to section 415A of the Act that says council cannot require a more onerous control when we're complying with a standard which includes, as per the Act, a performance criteria. That's the first point. Now, the second point is council have imposed conditions for affordable housing contribution. Whilst we've expressed concern, we don't agree with those contributions. I'm not here today to discuss our opinion on that. I'm here to talk about the imposition of the condition relating to 10 units. So I think it's 10 bedrooms, but we think it should be 8 bedrooms. So the reason being is that during COVID-19, we had a tenant who was paying $2,000 to $2,140 a fortnight, which is well in excess of the low-cost dwelling definition. During COVID, that tenant, during the peak of COVID, expressed, both the people that were tenants in that unit, that they were unable to pay rent because they lost their jobs, and they were on a working visa, they went in hospitality. So what happened at that time was that, as you might remember, there was an emergency bill that was put out, and Fair Trading said there's a moratorium that you can't increase rents during that period. And you also can't, there's a no eviction policy as well. So they weren't paying rent because they couldn't afford rent, and they're getting no government assistance because they were foreign citizens on a working visa. So rather than evicting them, which was unlawful, he said, I'll charge you 50% rent during the period of COVID, which is consistent with the regulations and Fair Trading's when considering a fair and reasonable negotiate discounted rent for people that are impacted by COVID and not getting any government subsidy. So that rent period was 50% discounted during the length of period. Then once the bill had been amended, where the COVID relief period ended, the rents were put up back to what market was prior to COVID, which is well above what is deemed to be low-cost housing. So the problem is that what's happened with that particular unit 11, is that there's been a significant charge of, it's about $110,000 for adding a balcony to that unit, because the owner at the time was, on compassionate grounds, decided to give a significant voluntary reduction in rent to those tenants, because otherwise they would have been risk of being homeless because they couldn't afford to pay rent and had no income. So I just think it's very unfair to be that charge and that particular unit. So we're not today disputing the other 8 bedrooms. We're just talking about this one apartment that out of compassionate grounds, we've discounted rent, that we don't think the affordable housing contribution should be charged. And also that it's only, the reality for that unit, it's only adding 3.8 square meters to infill an area to provide a balcony. So if you imagine that it just wouldn't be viable to add that deck on, which improves the amenity of that unit that currently doesn't have an AG compliant balcony space. Yeah, so we're just seeking to change that contribution amount from our calculations. If you take out the, if you go from 10 to 8 bedrooms, the contribution amount goes from 544,500 down to 435, so 435,000 rather than 544,500, if that makes sense.
Yep. Yep. We'll just note that. Thank you.
Just on that issue, in your submission, or I guess overnight or whatever, which we haven't got, have you provided documentary evidence to council of those dates where there was a certain rent charged pre-COVID, was adjusted during COVID, and then increased over COVID? Have we got documentary?
Yes, we actually have a detailed ledger by the agent that has weekly rent for the last 6 years. So it's very script. And yeah, that letter was issued midday yesterday, but I think it missed the 3 p.m. Monday cutoff. So it came 3 p.m. Tuesday, which is fair enough because you need time to read these things. But it's a comprehensive letter and it includes the detailed ledger. And I would think council, I believe council have been thorough in their assessment that they would not disagree with me with the rent amounts in the period. It's just more the philosophical kind of whether the, given that was discounted because of COVID as a requirement of the legislation, that's unfair and unreasonable to impose that 110,000 penalty for being that generous. Like if he discounted the rent only by 100, he wouldn't have to pay it, but because he did it at 50%, that's why he's being penalised.
Well, we can have a look at that. Yep. Okay. Thank you. We'll get that report and have a look at it when we retire from the meeting. So if there's no other questions, that concludes our meeting for today. And as we'll withdraw and to make our determinations, and our report will be available on the council website as soon as possible. So I'm closing the meeting now at 1:31 p.m.